Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, the why, what, and how of newspaper reading. Today we will discuss the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 8th June 2018. So let's start. There is an article on page number 6 which reads NGT tells tanneries to pay up for treatment plants. Now, this is related to an order passed by National Green Tribunal, which is the main environmental court of India. It has wrapped the tanneries located in and around Kanpur over the delay in setting up of common effluent treatment plants and directed them to contribute 25% of the cost as per its directions. So, the National Green Tribunal has directed tanneries, which are leather processing units, to contribute about 25% of the cost in setting up of the common effluent plants. These common effluent plants are basically the plants which are created to treat the effluents that is flowing out of these factories or industries. However, for small scale industries like leather tanneries, setting up of common effluent plants becomes difficult and it is very costly. So it has been decided to create the common effluent plants commonly for many of the industries that are located in a region. And for this, the NGT wants contribution from the various factories or industries that are located in a particular region. It has also been submitted in the court that about 60,000 tons of chromium waste is lying in Kanpur, which is leading to environmental pollution. So this topic falls under the preliminary syllabus under the topics General Issues on Environment and Ecology. So under this topic, we will try to understand how Ganga is being polluted, what are the efforts being taken out to clean river Ganga. Under this, we will understand the National Mission for Clean Ganga and Namami Ganga. Also, we will try to analyze the previous year questions which are related to various topics that are mentioned in this news article. For example, we will discuss questions related to NGT. We will also discuss questions related to the chromium waste and its effect, and the authorities which are involved in the implementation of National Mission for Clean Ganga and the Namami Ganga. Now, looking at the pollution in river Ganga, out of the total length of 2500 kilometers, about 600 kilometers is badly polluted. And the major cause of pollution is the rapid growth of urban areas and the industrial centers all along the banks. As can be seen in the map, various major cities are located which contribute to the pollution in the river Ganga. For example, the major cities that contribute to the pollution are Haridwar, Allahabad, Varanasi, Patna, and Kanpur. At Haridwar, the industrial waste from Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited and Indian Drug and Pharmaceuticals Limited is the major source of pollution. Along with it, the religious activities like the community bathing, for example, Kumbh Mela, and the discharge of flowers and immersion of ashes of the dead is a major source of pollution. Further, moving to Kanpur, Kanpur has been declared as one of the 10 most polluted cities of the world. The reason for such high level of pollution is that there are 300 leather tanneries located in Kanpur, and industrial waste from cotton and woolen textile, jute mills, and synthetic rubber mills is also contributing to the pollution in river Ganga. Further downstream, Allahabad is the confluence point of river Ganga and Yamuna. In this city, the religious activities are the major source of pollution along with some industrial centers. And in Varanasi, the major source of pollution is the religious belief of cremating the dead at the banks of Ganga. Further downwards, in Patna, the major source of pollution are oil refineries. So the major source of pollution and the major cities which are contributing to pollution in river Ganga have been discussed here. And from this we understand that religious activities is one of the major cause of pollution in river Ganga, because of religious towns like Haridwar, Allahabad and Varanasi which are located on the banks of river Ganga. Further, industrial activities also contribute to pollution in the river Ganga. For example, in Kanpur, the leather tanneries are the biggest contributor, and in Patna, the oil refineries are contributing to pollution in river Ganga. So whenever a question is asked related to pollution in river Ganga, we can draw a simple map showing the course of the river Ganga and the towns which are located on this river and the sources of pollution that are contributing to pollution in river Ganga. Now let us look at the sources from where the chromium gets into the environment and the ill effects of chromium. The major source of chromium is the industrial waste and the e-waste. It is also used as an hardener for the polyvinyl chloride plastics. The presence of chromium in the environment is highly detrimental to the health of human beings. It can cause damage to DNA and is extremely toxic in nature. So the major sources of chromium waste are the industrial waste, the e-waste or the electronic waste, and it is used as a hardener in the polyvinyl chloride which gets into the environment. Also, it has detrimental health effects which include damage to DNA and is extremely toxic in the environment. For cleaning the river Ganga, the government of India has started the Namami Ganga program. Now, this program falls under the Ministry of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation. And Namami Ganga program is an integrated conservation mission which is approved as a flagship program. Now, the budget outlay for this is rupees 20,000 crore and it aims at accomplishing twin objectives of effective abatement of pollution, conservation and rejuvenation of the national river Ganga. Now, the main pillars of Namami Gange program are sewage treatment infrastructure, riverfront development, this is to promote tourism, river surface cleaning, conservation of biodiversity, afforestation, generating public awareness, industrial effluent monitoring, and Ganga Gram. Now, this aspect of Namami Gange is in the present news because it wants to create common effluent treatment plants. The Ganga Gram project is under the Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation. So basically, Ganga Gram project is a sanitation project for integrated development of about 4,470 villages which are located on the river Ganga. So the key points that emerge are that the Namami Gange program is under the Ministry of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation. It has the following main focus areas, and we have learned about the Ganga Gram, which is under the Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation, which aims at sanitation project in the villages which are located on the river Ganga. Now let us understand some key facts related to National Mission for Clean Ganga. The National Mission for Clean Ganga was registered as a society under the Societies Registration Act 1860. It acted as the implementation arm of National Ganga River Basin Authority, which was constituted under the provisions of Environmental Protection Act 1986. However, this National Ganga River Basin Authority has been dissolved now, and in its place, National Council for Rejuvenation, Protection and Management of River Ganga has come into form. It is also referred to as the National Ganga Council. And regarding the composition of National Ganga Council, the Prime Minister will be the ex officio chairman of the council, and the Union Minister for Water Resource, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation will be the ex officio vice chairperson of this council. So the key facts that emerge are that the NGRBA or the National Ganga River Basin Authority has now been dissolved, which was created under the provisions of the Environmental Protection Act 1986, and in its place a National Ganga Council has been constituted. And the composition of this Ganga Council is the Prime Minister will be the ex officio chairman of this council, and the Union Minister for Water Resource will be the ex officio vice chairperson of this council. So these facts are important from prelims point of view. So under this news article, we have learned about the major sources of pollution of river Ganga, chromium waste and its effect. Also, we have learned about the basic features of Namami Gange program. And finally, we have learned about the composition of National Mission for Clean Ganga and the National Ganga Council. Now, although the news article was related to a small direction by the National Green Tribunal to the leather tanneries, however, we should look at such articles from the previous year questions point of view. And many questions have been asked on the topics that were mentioned in this article. So we will have a look at them. First, the article mentioned National Green Tribunal. Previously, two questions have been asked on the National Green Tribunal in the year 2012 and in the year 2018. The question asked in 2012 read, the National Green Tribunal Act 2010 was enacted in consonance with which of the following provisions of the Constitution of India? In this, the first statement says the right to healthy environment construed as a part of right to life under the Article 21. This is the only statement which is correct, and the other two statements are wrong in this case. So the correct answer is A, one only. Now if we have solved the previous year questions correctly, then we can solve the question asked in 2018 as well. It gives us a direction. The question asked in 2018 was, how is the National Green Tribunal different from the Central Pollution Control Board? Now the first statement says the NGT has been established by an act. So this is a fact which was also in the previous year question in the year 2012. Further, whereas the Central Pollution Control Board has been created by an executive order of the government. Now this statement is wrong. This is because Central Pollution Control Board has been created by the Water Act of 1974. Secondly, the NGT provides environmental justice and helps reduce the burden of litigation in the higher courts. We know that NGT is a special court for environmental justice, and the Central Pollution Control Board promotes cleanliness of streams and wells and aims to improve the quality of air in the country. This statement is correct. So the correct answer in this case is B, that is 2 only. So by solving these questions, we understood the importance of previous year questions as well. Further, in the year 2016, a question was asked related to the National Ganga River Basin Authority. Now in this question, the first statement is correct. That is, the river basin is the unit of planning and management. And second, it spearheads the river conservation efforts at the national level. So these two statements are correct. And the only wrong statement was the third one. One of the chief ministers of the state through which the Ganga flows becomes the chairman of NGRBA on a rotation basis. So this statement, because Prime Minister was the head of NGRBA, and presently it has been dissolved and the new National Ganga Council has been created, as we have learned in this article. So a question can be asked on the National Ganga Council as well. So the correct answer in this case is A, 1 and 2 only. Now we have discussed about the ill effects of chromium in this article. Now as we can see, Chromium is an important e-waste which has been asked in the year 2013. So in this case, the correct answer was B, that is 1, 2, 3, 5 and 6. Heptachlor and plutonium are not part of e-wastes. In the year 2013, another question was asked about pollutants that are found in the drinking water in some parts of India. So in this case, the correct answer was C, 1, 3 and 5. That is arsenic, fluoride and uranium. Now regarding the other two options, sorbitol and formaldehyde are wrong because formaldehyde is not liquid at room temperature and is not a major water pollutant. So by this, the options B and D can be eliminated. And uranium is found in some parts of India as well in the drinking water. This is found in groundwater in Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat and Haryana. So we have understood that in any news article, we should refer to the previous year questions which are related to the terms that are mentioned in the article. That is what helps us in creating a holistic view about any article in the news. With this, let us move on to the next article. From today's newspaper, we will try to understand certain key terms which are in news from the prelims point of view. Now these terms include, on the page number 2, there is a news about starvation deaths in Jharkhand and a proposal to create the food grain banks. So we'll understand what are food grain banks. Further on the editorial page, there is a conceptual section which talks about population bottleneck. This is important from the environment point of view. And in the Air India disinvestment, we'll look at what does AISAM, that is Air India Specific Alternative Mechanism, means. So these three terms which are in news become important from prelims point of view because in the present year questions were asked in the preliminary examination which appeared in the news article. Now regarding the food grain bank, the Food Department of Jharkhand has proposed to set up a food grain bank of varied capacity at the block level and the panchayat level. Now this decision has been taken after the death of a woman allegedly due to starvation from hunger. And such food grain banks will help the marginalized and the vulnerable sections of the population with basic food requirements. Under this, it has been suggested to develop a food grain bank at block level which will have 10 quintals of grains. And at the panchayat level, there will be a stock of 1 quintal of grains. This will be used in the cases of emergency to avoid deaths from starvation. Now let us understand what is meant by a population bottleneck. A population bottleneck is also known as a genetic bottleneck. And this genetic bottleneck refers to any cataclysmic event that reduces the population of a species. Now these events can include natural events like earthquakes or natural disasters and man-made events like wars or genocides. Now such events have an adverse effect on the diversity of a species. And due to population bottlenecks, certain genetic variations will be completely lost. And due to the decrease in this variation, there are chances that the population of such a species will be completely lost. Now regarding the AISAN, which is the Air India Specific Alternative Mechanism, it will be headed by the Finance Minister. And this has been created because no bids were received for the disinvestment of Air India in the first round. Now this AISAN or the Air India Specific Alternative Mechanism has been created to consider all the alternatives that are available so that the disinvestment of Air India is carried on smoothly. So the three terms that we have understood are the food grain banks, the population bottleneck and the AISAN. All these three terms can be important from prelims point of view. With this, let us move on to the next article. There is an article on page number 8 which reads Sustaining Earth for the Future. Now the article focuses on the need to preserve our rich biodiversity. This is important in order to sustain our life, cultures and traditions. And all these have relations to our ecosystem. So we'll try to understand the author's point of view regarding the conservation of biodiversity. Now this will fall under the General Studies paper 3 under the topic Environment and Conservation, Environmental Pollution and Degradation. So let's try to understand. We will also try to understand some of the key terms that are mentioned in the article. For example, the Anthropocene era and the half Earth. The author first tries to focus on the level of destruction of biodiversity that is happening in the world presently. He also provides an insight about the relation between the people's cultures and traditions with that of the ecosystem. The author says that our countless ecosystems are spread across vast lands, rivers and ocean. He says that this rich fabric of biodiversity represents vibrant and colorful tapestry of peoples, cultures and traditions living in sync with ecosystem. So he tries to explain that people's cultures and traditions have been living in sync with the ecosystem. However, our rich ecosystem is now being subjected to wear and tear, that is, we are facing widespread destruction. And this is due to unsustained economic development. That is, we do not have a sustainable economic development model. He further explains that due to the sudden upsurge in economic activity, biologists all over the world have been documenting the ongoing loss of life forms and natural habitats. And the economic activity has increased the rate of extinction of different species exponentially. Highlighting the increased rate of extinction of different species, the author says that in the recent decades, population of more than 40% of the large mammals have declined and the insect biomass has decreased by about 75%. Further, as per the scientists, we have entered an Anthropocene era. This is an important term. It means a new period in Earth's history when humans have begun to impact our environment at the global scale. There are many examples for this. For example, degradation and vanishing of forests and rivers, which include rivers like Ganga and Yamuna. Further, pollution of air in cities and towns. An example is toxic air in Indian cities, including Delhi. So, the author says that various peoples and cultures have been living in sync with the ecosystem. However, this ecosystem is facing wear and tear due to unsustained economic development. He further says that due to the unsustained economic development, there has been an increase in the rate of extinction of different species. He further explains that more than 40% of the large mammals have been declined and the biomass of insects has decreased by more than 75%. He says that we have entered an Anthropocene era, a new period in Earth's history when humans have begun to impact our environment at global scales. And he further exemplifies this by showing that the degradation of forests and rivers, including that of rivers like Ganga and Yamuna, and the pollution in the cities like Delhi. To control this widespread destruction of biodiversity, the author suggests possible solutions. The first is that Half Earth is an ambitious project of the famous American biologist E.O. Wilson, which has been started to protect the life on Earth, where he calls for protecting 50% of the Earth's land surface in order to conserve our rapidly disappearing natural heritage. So this term half Earth is very important from prelims point of view. Further, the conservation of natural heritage must accompany protection of rights and cultures of the indigenous tribes. This is because the tribes have been living in harmony with the nature, and most of their practices are not detrimental to the environment or the biodiversity of that area. Further, India's forest policy calls for forests to cover almost third of the country, one third of the total land area of the country, and if we include other natural systems such as grasslands and wetlands, the area to be protected could be increased to about almost 40%. So, while providing possible solutions, the author says that Half Earth Project, which is a project by the American biologist E.O. Wilson, calls for protecting about 50% of the Earth's land surface in order to conserve our rapidly disappearing natural heritage. He further calls for protection of rights and cultures of indigenous tribes because they live in harmony with the nature. And also, India's forest policy aims at covering one third of the land by forests. However, if we include grasslands and wetlands, this area can be increased to almost 40%. Now, for achieving those possible solutions, the author says that India's conservation efforts are largely restricted to forest lands only. For this, he says that we need to catalog, map, and monitor lives, which should include not just forests but also other species. He further says that we can utilize digital tools and artificial intelligence to effectively catalog, map, and monitor the natural heritage. Further, he says that this mapping effort would include not only all life forms but will also include cultures, ethnicities, and dialects. As he had mentioned earlier, the tribes live in harmony with the nature. So he provides for preserving the cultures, ethnicities, and dialects. So in this, the author says that it is important to catalog, map, and monitor all types of life forms, including the forests and other species. Further, he provides for using the digital tools and artificial intelligence. He also provides that we should not just map and monitor all the life forms, but we should also map and monitor the cultures, ethnicities, and dialects. The author further says that the cataloging will help us in identifying different natural resources and life forms. It will also help us identify the most vulnerable and will help us take appropriate steps for their preservation. Further, he says that this effort of cataloging will help us to understand the myriad relationship of different components of our ecosystems at different levels, including interaction of humans with the nature. So this effort of cataloging will help us in conserving natural resources and preservation of various species. It will also help us in understanding the interaction of humans with the nature. So the author concludes that we need all stakeholders, including the government, civil society, institutions and researchers, etc., to develop a program to document, map and monitor all life forms, to develop a new knowledge enterprise to fully explore various dimensions of biodiversity and ecosystem services, and their critical link to our future. So we have understood that this article was related to the conservation of biodiversity, and it called for reducing the exploitation of natural resources due to economic development. It further provided solutions to these problems. Now, in this article, we encountered two important terms, that is Anthropocene era and half Earth. Now, these are important from prelims point of view because in the recent prelims exam, a question was asked. The term sixth mass extinction or the sixth extinction is often mentioned in the news in the context of the discussion of. So, the correct answer in this case was D. Mankind's overexploitation or misuse of natural resources, fragmentation or loss of natural habitats. So, we should understand these important terms as well. With this, let us move on to the next article. This news article on page number 11 is related to the visit of Minister of External Affairs to South Africa. Now, this is related to an event which happened to Mahatma Gandhi at Petermaritzberg in South Africa. This is important for us from the preliminary examination point of view under the syllabus Indian Nationalist Movement. We will try to understand important facts related to this news article. Now, the key facts related to Petermaritzburg incident are that Petermaritzburg is a station in South Africa where Mahatma Gandhi was thrown out of a train. Now, he was thrown out of the train because he was traveling in the white only compartment despite having a ticket for the same compartment. Now, this happened because South Africa was under an apartheid regime which believed in white supremacy and was known for its racial discrimination. This was a life altering event in Mahatma Gandhi's life because it was at this point that he gave up his practice of law and started working for the rights of Indian people who were stationed in South Africa at that point. Now, the year of happening of this incident is very important from prelims point of view. This event is particularly important because it is the 125th anniversary of the Petermaritzburg incident. Also, it is the 100th birth centenary of Madiba or the Nelson Mandela. And finally, India is celebrating 25 years of diplomatic relations between India and South Africa. So this event of history becomes particularly important. Now, the year of happening of the Petermaritzburg incident, that is 1893, is particularly important because in the recent preliminary examination, a question was asked on the chronology of important events. And the question read, which among the following events happened the earliest? And the answer to this question was Deenbandhu Mitra wrote Neel Darpan. It was in 1858 to 59. So we should know the years of happenings of important historical events from the preliminary point of view. There is an article on page number 9 which is about the current economic growth in the country. This article analyzes the pattern of growth, the challenges in the growth pattern, and what needs to be done to keep a sustained economic growth. Now, this topic will fall under the General Studies Paper 3 under the topic Economic Development and the subtopic Indian Economy and Issues Relating to Mobilization of Resources, Growth, Development and Employment. So, the article questions that, is the Indian economy on an upswing now? So, 3 point of views have been mentioned in this article. The first point of view says that many policy initiatives have shown a clear productivity enhancing through a supply side thrust. So, this point of view analyzes that there has been a sharp recovery. And this has been because of the government's initiatives like GST, Make in India, Startup India and inflation targeting. The second point of view says that while the growth estimates may point to an upswing, the euphoria may be premature. So this point of view analyzes the challenges that need to be addressed to sustain the level of economic growth that is being witnessed. And the third point of view analyzes what needs to be done to sustain this sharp recovery that has been witnessed. Now, the article uses the following terms to describe the Indian economy. The article says that the Indian economy has shown a strong V-shaped recovery driven by the domestic growth impulses. Now, the V-shaped recovery means when the growth is plotted, it assumes a V shape. Now, to understand this, a V-shaped economic recession describes the shape of market's performance. It begins with a steep fall as shown here, but then it quickly finds a bottom as it is shown here. It has touched the bottom at this V point. And finally, it turns back around and moves immediately to a higher growth rate. So this can be seen in the growth curve. Now, India has been witnessing this V-shaped recovery because in the last 3 quarters, growth has steadily recovered to 6.3%, 7% and 7.7% in the second and fourth quarters of 2017-18 respectively. Earlier, due to the initiatives like demonetization and sudden introduction of GST, the growth rate had started falling down, which can be seen in the graph here. So the article analyzes that Indian economy has shown a strong V-shaped recovery driven by domestic impulses. Further, it explains what V-shaped economic recession means. The V-shaped economic recession means the growth first falls steeply, then it finds a bottom quickly, and then it turns around and moves immediately to a higher level. Now, the sharp recovery, which is shown in this graph here, is based entirely on domestic factors. The article further analyzes that the two segments which have supported growth, particularly in the fourth quarter of 2017 and 18, are the government investments and the overall investment demand. Now, there was overall investment demand because there was a need to build infrastructure and demand into the public sector activities. The government investment has increased due to growth in public expenditure. That is, government is spending more on projects which are related to infrastructure development, etc. And finally, the government has focused upon productivity enhancing through various policy measures, which include GST, Make in India, Startup India, and inflation targeting, etc. So the article says that the sharp recovery is based entirely on domestic factors, which is due to government investment and overall investment demand. The recovery is also due to productivity enhancing through various policy measures by the government, for example, the GST, Make in India, Startup India, and inflation targeting. Now, although India has been witnessing a V-shaped recovery, there are certain challenges which need to be addressed. Now, these challenges are the rising global crude oil prices and the prospects of fiscal slippage. Now, the rising crude oil prices will have adverse effect on the current account deficit. It will lead to an increase in inflation. It can also adversely affect the exchange rate and can ultimately lead to an increase in fiscal deficit. Also, continued pressure on inflation may prompt the RBI to revise the repo rate upwards during the current year. This will in turn affect the investment, especially the private investment. As recently the RBI had revised the repo rate upwards. This was done in order to counter the inflation. And due to this increase in repo rates, generally the prices of loans increase, and due to which the private investments fall. Now, the second challenge that Indian growth story faces is the fiscal slippage. Simply, the fiscal slippage means an increase in the fiscal deficit. Now, an increase in fiscal deficit can be witnessed due to the increase in government spending. And this increase in government spending is required if there is sluggish export growth, there is lack of private investment, and government spends more when there is a rising demand of loan waivers. And due to this, there is an increase in fiscal deficit, and which is known as fiscal slippage as well. And this factor adversely affects the growth rate. Now, besides the above two mentioned factors, there are other challenges that are faced by Indian economy. These include agricultural distress, rising inflation, and challenging external environment due to an increase in threats of China and US trade war, and also the twin balance sheet problem of Indian economy. Now, we know that this is related to non-performing assets of the banks. And all these will lead to a low private investment and will ultimately lead to an increased government spending. The article further analyzes what needs to be done to sustain this improved economic growth. The article says that the country will have to reinvigorate private investments by early resolution of NPAs and encouraging private investment by encouraging supportive policy initiatives for the industry. So the article says that there is a need to increase the private investments, which can be done by resolving the problem of non-performing assets in the banks. Also, the article says that supportive policy initiatives are required for the industry for an increased private investment. Secondly, the exports need to be increased. This can be done by incentivizing the exporters. The article says that India will have to be prepared to meet the adversities which are arising out of China-US trade war and the rising of interest rate in US. So the article says that a V-shaped recovery is being witnessed in the Indian economy. Further, the article says that this sharp recovery is based entirely on domestic factors. The article also analyzes the challenges which need to be addressed in order to sustain the current economic growth. And these challenges include rising crude oil prices and the prospects of fiscal slippage or fiscal deficit. And finally, the article analyzes what needs to be done in order to sustain the current economic growth rate. In this, it says that there is a need to increase the private investments and supportive policy measures are required to increase the private investment. It also says that there is a need for incentivizing the exporters in order to increase India's export performance. With this, we have come to the end of today's discussion. For more DNS videos, subscribe and press the bell icon. Now let us move on to the question for the day.